Welcome to the Kennedy Events Podcast, where we feature top marketing, communications, and future of work leaders and share their biggest takeaways and insights. We love these conversations and hope you will too. Let's get started.
Welcome. This episode is brought to you by Kennedy Events. Kennedy Events creates stress-free conferences and events, providing expert management and design for all your corporate event needs, from in-person to hybrid and virtual events. You can learn more about us at kennedyevents.com. I am super excited to introduce Julie Liu. As AvePoint's Senior Vice President of Marketing, Julie heads up a wildly creative global team known for doing whatever it takes. She is an industry-recognized marketing leader, most recently venturing to create pandemic-proof, scalable marketing strategies, launch a sustainable global partner program, and establish AvePoint's foothold as a publicly traded company. She's very well caffeinated, which translates to extreme agility in response to market demands, all from the comfort of her Seattle home, though she's coming to us from an awesome media studio in DC today. Hi, Julie.
Paige. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad you're here with me. Yeah. It's really good to see you. And this is a great way to catch up.
For sure.
You've been up to.
Yeah, it's been like 2 years since we worked together, but we stayed in contact through the pandemic, exchanging ideas. I'm so excited that events are now back in our world and they're picking up incredible pace and velocity now.
It sure feels like that. I'm super curious to jump in from there. Yeah. Everybody, I hate the P word pivot, but everybody had to do it during the pandemic, the never-ending pandemic. How did you shift your strategy? And then how have you shifted since the world opened back up?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think, when we talk about marketing, AvePoint, as reference, is a B2B SaaS company, right? So our clients are not necessarily the same as you would do to entice and delight the consumer brand. So ours is really out of necessity. We build confidence for people to go faster so that they can trust us when they need a stopgap, when they need something to fall back on. That's the crux of AvePoint solutions. So when we talk about like marketing and just the, how events kind of played into it, it was honestly like running an agility course. We went into lockdown in March of 2020, a month before that, a week before that, I was actually in San Francisco and Oakland. So it was kind of in like your backyard.
Yeah.
And then we went into lockdown. I had just come back from Europe. It's a lot of it comes down to a multi-touch marketing approach. So we are fortunate enough to have both digital presence as well as in-person presence, but to move from that capacity and say, okay, all of our demand generation, all of the events that we do where we actually engage with people that are of a different caliber than, their self-discovery and self-journey online goes away immediately. So then what's left? So then a lot of our marketing approach became, okay, what is the business need now? Now that everybody's going to lockdown, business still has to continue and everybody's gone, and nobody was hybrid at that time. It was just 100% work from home. Mm-hmm. So our strategy pivoted to, okay, what kind of digital events can we experience with? What kind of virtual sponsorships can we experience with? Going from hour-long webcasts, which we had been doing prior to 2020 because it was educational, it was informative. You came around with 5 different bullet points. And now all of a sudden, it's like people's attention spans where there's a child, there's a dog, things need to happen. There's dinner that needs to be cooked. There's 14 people living on top of each other. Not 14 always, but there's just so many different factors that need attention all at once. So we cut it down to 30 minutes. Now it's like, okay, all of a sudden events came back in a rush. And now it's about finding budget for a lot of different activities. And also, we did take a break from events for almost 2 years. So now there's new folks in marketing. There's a lot of upskilling. There's also just intentional event and design to really make it worth people's time when there's so many different options of events again.
You just hit on something I really want to dig in on, the being intentional with your event design in this. This was always a necessity, but it sometimes got overlooked in favor of we have to cram all this content into people's brains. I feel like it's often the case, and I know you've experienced this too, that you have an ideal concept in mind where there's this beautiful balance between socializing and networking and something fun and memorable and content. And then often demands for like squeezing in content just kill all the fun and all the extra stuff and all the spaciousness. But you also touched on what happened to people's attention spans during COVID. And now it's like, in my mind, and I advise, like, we're broken. We're permanently broken. Our attention spans actually weren't good to begin with. Yeah. COVID really just shined a light on it because now we're all in our little like Zoom and Teams spaces and you can watch us like, you know.
And TikTok took over. TikTok exploded in it. And now it's just like exacerbating our issues.
Right.
Like
so now we're just like in the moment, like, what have you done for me in the last 3 seconds? 3 seconds. Yeah. So how do you, like, what do you think, whether it's virtual or live, what do you think successful intentional design looks like?
Yeah, I think the idea of like creating things with intent is that it's actually not about us. You and I can sit here until we're blue in the face talking about like what content we think should hit the market or like what we think that people want to hear, but it's actually about the experience of the audience, right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about smaller events where we have multi-session virtual activities, 10 to 15 to 20 minute sessions, a lot of it is just, what am I getting out of this? What are my takeaways? Can I use this in the future state? And if not, then why would I attend? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be, like your brain dump of every single thing you think about ever, but it has to be curated for the audience. So now, instead of like people choosing their own path at what would be in-person events, we're kind of telling them, this is what you are getting up front. Join us or not, but you will get value out of the time that you invest in it. And that I think is what creating with intent also means like creating trust, right? Like that we want them to come back to engage with us on multiple levels, not just events and not just, blogs and such, but across the board as a multi-touch marketing strategy.
So the trust component sounds to me like, and then tell me if I've got this right, if you've successfully built trust in me as a customer or a prospect, then I am buying into your idea. Like, you're giving me this much content. You're telling me, trust me, this is what you need right now. You're going to come away better and happier for it. It's only this long. It's not, 10 tracks overwhelming me for 2 or 3 days. It's digestible, it's right-sized, and it's the right thing for me in this moment. Did I have that right?
Yeah. And I think it's actually even more, it's a little bit more than that too, right? Because when you Google something, you're probably Googling for one specific answer. Mm-hmm. So if the answer is nested in the middle of an event that's an hour long, I've lost your attention somewhere between 0 and 30, give you that tidbit information at 30 to 32 minutes, and then continued on. You're just like, okay, I get that those things are the things that I need, but I really only needed to understand one thing. Now, education is different, right? So again, that intent comes with understanding the audience and setting the goals up front for what we're actually trying to achieve out of our marketing activities and events.
Nice. How do you discover from your audience what they want and need from you?
A few things. One, we ran a brand survey at the end of last year. So that helped us set quite a few baselines for what direction we should be going in. We have a phenomenal and extensive customer success team of which we get a lot of feedback from. We have a great sales team that has their ear to the ground where we take a lot of direction from, because that's market trends, right? And then we have a product team that basically is tied with our sellers to really point the direction of what market needs are going to be, what solutions we actually need to bring to market, and how we can get advance of that from that thought leadership perspective. So
it sounds like you have a lot of like really good practices in place internally for feedback loops and dialogues across teams. So you're not siloized. Yeah. You're getting really good intelligence from one another.
We are. And I think that was actually a practice that became even more diligent during pandemic, because we were all working from home too. We didn't have the luxury of time. There's a finite amount of time that you have to enter the market based on solutions and topics and problems. And that thing for us was work from home. Mm-hmm. How to be work from home ready, right? You don't get that. for every week that we spent thinking that this could be a potential idea for us to do a webinar or to do events and things like that, you lose a lot of real estate in marketing.
Yeah. So early in the pandemic, you had clients who didn't have all the tools that they needed to be successful working at a desk across the room from their child trying to go to Zoom classrooms.
Yeah.
So that was an opportunity, huge opportunity, it sounds like, for you guys to give them and train them in those tools.
Yeah, for sure. Both on the back end as well as like, you and I as end users. Not all companies are as, tech savvy as we may be. Right. Some people didn't have video conferencing. Some people had like 14 different systems of communication. How do you tie all of that in? I'm pretty sure like all the people doing the back end management and like systems were just like, oh no, there are so many people working from home. There's those security issues, permissioning issues. It's a lot. It's like, it becomes a lot. And that time is probably the time where a lot of buyers were like, oh crap,
right?
We need something. We need some software. And hence, time is critical to marketing.
Yeah, for sure. So you like to say that you're making SaaS sexy. How are you doing that? Especially, forgive me, but some people would say nothing Microsoft is sexy, but I'm sure you would beg to differ. So tell us how you're.
Yeah. So we went public almost a year ago at this time of the recording. We are currently in June. We went public July of 2021. And we did a brand survey, and it basically came down to, look, AvePoint is probably a company with a lot of bite and very little bark. Because it is. Because again, nobody talks about this unsexy stuff in the back house, right?
Right.
So AvePoint, with SaaS in Style, which is our brand campaign, with the launch of this everything that comes from it. It comes from ads, it comes from videos, it comes from like what we are doing on earned and paid media, things that we will start doing with events that we may have seen a little bit of already. A lot of those different components comes down to that hybrid life and work from home life is actually almost a lifestyle, right? And when we talk about lifestyle, we almost treat all the tools that we are given as accessories. How do we elevate how we work through tools and solutions to make it easier, to make you look better? So a lot of that comes from like the SaaS and Style motivations behind what we are doing now.
I really love what you get out of those. You can do a brand survey and be like, okay, people think X of us, but you seem to really have a gift for honing in on that insight and then spinning it up into something that's meaningful for your clients. Which of those things, like you just gave a really great example, where are you seeing success with that? Like which platforms, which angles, which approaches are working for you guys?
Yeah. So we actually, I'll link it here in the podcast notes and such. But one of the things that our brand team actually worked with agencies on is to develop a video. And at the end of the video, they kind of say the words like, wait, this is a software company? Like they're just kind of shocked factor where you're kind of enticing people and delighting people with all the imagery of very high fashion in a very stark contrast. It was filmed in Spain, right? Our ad was filmed in Spain. And then you come out of that and you go, wait, this is a software company. Interesting. And the whole idea is for you to create a self journey to go and look at, okay, AvePoint.com, like /InStyle.
Right.
What is this? What is this? And like, what's the draw? What's the catch? Like, it's just to create some kind of a little shock factor.
Yeah.
And all the things that tie into it, the style guides, the blog posts, all of our media interviews, all of that is kind of tied together to bring to life this idea of like how marketing as a whole is more than just any one thing. It's truly all encompassing and you get it from all directions.
I love it. I also love you're building something. It sounds like super aspirational. I want to picture myself in that image. I want to be where those models and actors are in that shoot. I'd like that to be my life. And you're telling me AvePoint could help me do that?
Yeah.
I'm all over it. Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. Where do you go to, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a master's in public health. You weren't born doing this. This is your formal education. How did you learn to do the job you're doing?
Yeah. I did my undergrad in like developmental economics, econ math, also nothing to do with marketing at all. But I also graduated around the time of 2008. So I am actually pursuing my master's in public health. That took a back seat, and that's probably going to go take a back seat for quite some time. But no, when I was doing my undergrad, a lot of it came down to this is by chance. A lot of it came down to the financial crisis of 2008, not knowing. So I left Boston, moved back to New York, and AvePoint offered me an incredible opportunity in a period of change to I didn't know what I was doing in marketing necessarily, but I do know that I am incredibly organized and I can figure it out. Mm-hmm. And all of that came down to having a really strong team of people who knew what direction we wanted to run in and giving me a lot of creative freedom to basically go and run. And I've had phenomenal mentors that have helped me along the way.
Who are some of those mentors?
What was that?
Who are some of those mentors?
Yeah. So actually, one of the ones that first came on board was Heather Newman. So she actually works at Microsoft now, but she ran Creative Maven for a period of time, which was also a lot of event design. But that was her thing, right? It was about creating enticing experiences and such. And I think that was really key to kind of how I started viewing events, because prior to that, it was really just organizational and getting it out the door. And then Jeffrey Pease, who was our CMO in 2014, 2015 timeframe, really taught me how to operationalize and create the rest of my marketing toolkit to bring to life all the other aspects tied in with this really strong event mentor, right? So all of these things tied together has kind of led to where we are now. And even now we have a phenomenal CMO, chief brand officer. We have people that are really big with the ideas that can bring to life the storytelling aspect of AvePoint as a brand.
Nice. And now you have a ton of knowledge, confidence, a really robust team. Sounds like you still have people like above and around you that you learn from. How about out in the broader world? Where do you go to learn?
Oh, gosh. Well, as a consumer of many webinars and blog posts, I think a lot of it comes down to things like CMO clubs, a lot of working with industry peers, because it is, as much as we say that like marketing is a industry, is a role, is a job, is actually much more nuanced than that, right? If I'm doing something like Coachella or Lollapalooza as an event, it's very different than what I'm trying to bring to the audience around like demand generation. So we go in with these intents. There's a lot of, honestly, I spent half my time like reading Gartner and Forrester reports around the shifting landscape of marketing. It's tremendously boring. Nobody's saying that like even the SaaS marketing on how to market content is not necessarily the world's most like
super dry and analytic.
Yeah, and because it is data driven, right? AvePoint is a very data driven organization. I look at numbers every single day, probably every single hour, probably more frequently than that. And a lot of it comes down to, in a highly competitive environment, when you're constantly trying to do more and more, and with people's attention spans decreasing, you have to find a balance around like what appeals to them almost emotionally. And I think that that's the shift that we see that becomes more personal. So this, I talked about SaaS and style, but a lot of it is to evoke feeling rather than just say like, this is software you need. And it is software you need, but I'm also telling, yes, I can say that over and over again, but until you come to that conclusion yourself, it doesn't really matter.
Or until you, from AvePoint, find a way of connecting to the emotion, the pain, or the problem that person is having in the moment, or that what they're trying to learn, aspire to, whatever. So you hit on something. I want to dive in on that on live events for a second.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, we produced an event together for AvePoint called Shift Happens. Yeah. You tell me a little bit about exactly that, like what events do for your customers and your prospects, what problem they solve for you, trying to, hook people that make you want to have a live event when you can have budget and space to produce live events.
Live events are ROI on live events are insane. in both sense, like the upfront cost is insane. So you have to like stomach that. And then also they actually produce some of our highest generating opportunities that we've had here at AvePoint. So Shift Happens was one that we partnered with you on. It's one where, we set up goals, right? We knew that it was going to be focused and targeting our existing customers. A lot of that was making sure that they were utilizing our software to the fullest extent that they could to maximize what they were getting out of what they were already paying for. The other component is that we're not going to be the people to solve every single one of the problems. So we also brought in partners and had them kind of share their thoughts and services and solutions around how they fit into our ecosystem and how they fit into the client's perspective. And, I told you upfront, I gave you a budget first and foremost. I told you, look, we want to make this is for existing customers. We want to excite, delight. And honestly, my job here is to really just, for no better term, be a good steward of the AvePoint brand and create this experience that will help them understand the value in their investments and actualize their investments.
I think one of the things you hit on that I think it's easy for us as planners to take for granted. And so I feel like I'm being reminded or relearning something I might have once understood is that when you are bringing in a partner, you are signaling to your clients, we are a solution for you and we are a resource for you for other solutions.
Yeah.
Think of us first. And because we're thinking about all of the problems that you have and all of the potential solutions.
Building
right?
Building trust.
Which, yes, it's I'll just spill my water, but that's just fine. I overuse this phrase, but that's a virtuous cycle. Which in turn builds trust.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but that is what it is. If you think about all of our own personal relationships, it is a feedback loop. It is about this circle. And events, live events especially, gives me that face time.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the most important things to building partnerships, because it's much harder to say no or say like, I don't need that, or like to just shy away from a conversation if you don't have a personal connection with someone.
Right. So there's that human connection. There's like, oh my God, I'm really seeing you in 3 dimensions. I think we've all had that like delightful cognitive dissonance of like seeing people again. Which makes you appreciate like that thing you took for granted, the value of being together in person. But what, so you set goals, you're looking at data all the time. Do you have any sense of the long tail of a live experience versus a virtual experience? Like how memorable, how long it lasts for somebody?
I can see what I read. I know people still talk about Shift Happens in 2019 as far as when we talk about more qualitative feedback. People still talk about the one that we worked with, and then live it was a delightful experience. We had the agent that was represented on Narcos presented very enticing and very, very, very different perspectives. That made it a little bit more fun at the end of the day after a long day, right? There's things that I think will make a lasting impression that you can draw commonalities from. The same way, to the extent of which, people may talk about sports or the game that I was on last night or, whatever it may be. It's just another point of connection. So I think long tail wise, that's definitely more key. I think virtual events are a lot less personal in the sense that if I don't want to engage with you on a virtual event, I don't have to. I don't have to ever make eye contact with you. Most of our attendees may not even be on video. There's a lot of things that, are great to a certain extent, but have a different goal tied to it.
Right.
That usually, when I say we lay out the bullet points of like what you can expect for some of these shorter engagements, Dux, our chief brand officer, does a ton of, LinkedIn content, and all of that comes with like the 2 or 3 things that you can take away in a very short time frame, because that's all the time he has. That's all the attention span he's going to get out of folks. And I think that that's true of virtual events too. So virtual events, I would say our goal there is more not just brand awareness, but like point problem solving.
Really quick takeaways that will solve a problem for them quickly and again, like hook their attention and help build trust. Build trust. Build
exactly.
trust.
Exactly. And it has to be very specific, right? Like you have to make sure that you're solving their problem or making sure that they know what they're going to get out of it versus our live events. We had the luxury of time. We had the luxury of attention. We had the luxury of being able to educate and plant seeds for future.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure that I was going to ask you about milestones. I'm sure that a really big one was going public a year ago, as you mentioned. And congratulations. That's a huge moment.
Thank you.
And you were saying like the timing on IPOs are funky. How did that come together? What did that feel like? And then what did you do around that to celebrate it and amplify it?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that go into events, the same way that I lean on you to make sure that, whatever venue staff, it's not just about the event design, right? It's about the nuances that like you have a coffee station. If you have a coffee station, you have cups. Where do you put the tea bags? Where do you put like the sugar at the beginning or the end of the line? Is there a little trash can for the coffee stirs? Things like that. That's almost what event planning actually is. So this whole, we went public, we had a few days of which were options for us to actually do the celebration, to list, to go to NASDAQ, to do the speech, to hit the buzzer, things like that. We didn't really know which day it was going to be until like 2.5 weeks in advance. Wow. So that required, and it was celebratory because this is a major milestone for us. We wanted to bring together a lot of people that put in a ton of work and they were spread out everywhere. So getting logistics done for that, bringing them in, getting a venue. We did have a celebration after, we had to create a ton of graphics. Charlie, our now content and creative director, and I'm pretty sure she was working 18-hour days, if not more, to get this done with her team because we ended up buying out all the billboards in Times Square. And it's such a large undertaking in such a quick amount of time with such turnaround that everybody has a role to play, but everybody also pitched in on every single front.
You seem to have an amazing corporate culture. I mean, air quotes, but you seem to have an amazing, loving, warm, appreciative team who are really all like rowing in the same direction together, but also respecting and valuing one another.
Yeah, I literally cannot say enough good things about the team that we have here at AvePoint. They've kept me sane through the pandemic timeframe when we were all working from home. But there is a lot of trust built, right? There's a lot of here's the direction in it, go run. That's how I spent the last 10 years of my career here at AvePoint. And that's kind of the direction and the people that we want to build and the culture we want to foster. Guardrails in place, of course, and also a lot of the pandemic, I would say, also changed how we work in terms of you're not working 8 hours in a row. You're not working I don't really think either of us work 8 hours in a row. That would be nice. But
I might not succeed in leaving my desk, but I'm probably not working 8 hours.
But even then, right? Like to the opposite spectrum, we are a global organization. So that sometimes meant getting up at 4 and then going away for a little bit at noon and then coming back online around like 1 and going until 8 or 9. Like it really just depends on how we work. So a lot of it comes down to resourcing, staffing, making sure that people are well taken care of, literally like fed, taken care of. Fed, hydrated.
Are you eating? Are you drinking? Yes.
Are you eating? Are you drinking? Which is honestly not that different than like event life. I mean, I'm pretty sure you and I live to each other like, did you eat today? Like
totally. I mean, I have told new clients when I'm explaining like what a show book is, that it's like a minute by minute. I'm like, we will put, if it's a gala, we will have in there like, Julie, have you applied your lipstick? Like,
yes.
Stop right now and go change because you haven't paused all day and there's about to be dressed up people here,
Yes. Go change and also like maybe take like an oil patch to your face or something.
And eat a bite of food. You just hit on something and I'm trying to like pull back to, in all of this, I think a trend that you mentioned that's probably easy to take for granted is how much asynchronous work we're all doing and your clients are likely doing, because now we're at minimum spread out across multiple US time zones, or even if your entire team were in one major metropolitan area, their lives have shifted so that they're going offline to pick up the kids from school at midday, or to walk the dog, or practice some self-care, or take a bite of food, and we can't lay eyes on one another in the same way. What do you think are some ways, and you can answer this however you like, whether from like workplace culture or marketing, what it requires to get somebody's attention, we can and should be thinking about asynchronous work?
Oh boy. That's actually a really funny question, because AvePoint kind of thrives in asynchronous work in terms of our solutions and business values as well. Yeah. I will say, I think, we are a software company that built software for us in mind first. So we use all the solutions that we actually sell. And I think a lot of it comes down to setting communication standards. So that was one of the things that we actually at the beginning of the pandemic talked a lot about, was internal communications. What do you use where and when with whom? So we predominantly are a Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Stack in general organization. So emails need to go away a little. Teams chats need to be utilized. Teams channels need to be utilized for very specific purposes. Let's make sure that they're thoughtfully created. Let's make sure that we are tagging the right people, making sure notifications are going out. And a lot of it came down to, let's not work in silos. And I'm not saying we are far from perfect. We just had 2 days of which we discussed how to reorganize our internal communication structure to make sure that people know where they're getting it from, right? I think that has shifted a lot in the asynchronous work frame of mind. I think also, I did not turn on my video for the first 2 months of pandemic, because I thought video was a little, not necessarily because it was bad, but because I spent so much FaceTime with people. So usually it was just a call, and it was usually 2 to 3 minutes, and that was it. But then I stopped catching up people. There was no more water cooler talk. So getting people's attention was like, hey, I'm just going to message you because I need a question answered. That's it. And then I realized at some point, I was like, okay, but if I don't turn on my video, nobody else will. And if nobody else will, I actually don't know how they're reacting to what I'm saying, nor do I know if they're actually listening to me. So now almost, as long as it's not before 6 a.m., my video will be on.
Yep. I had the flip side during COVID where I was like, I've been on video. I bought into it immediately. Yeah. I think perhaps because we're a smaller team, we're like more isolated and more separate. But then I hit a limit where I had to do the opposite, right? Like, when can this not be video? Yeah. When can this just be a call? And it doesn't matter if I'm staring off into the distance instead of locking eyes with you. Yeah. But I think that's a real level setting each potential communications channel is a challenge and an opportunity we're all facing.
Yeah. And it's also like, do meetings need to be an hour long? No. Do meetings need to be half an hour long? Probably not. Right. Should they be like 15 minutes if it's just a bi-weekly check-in or something like that? Start with that. But also, as far as team practices go, Monday, take 15 minutes to decide what meetings you need, the recurring ones, because it's always nice to have recurring ones to remind you that you probably need to think about that topic. Yep. Even if you have no updates, maybe shorten it, cancel it, move it, figure it out.
Do the homework to catch up on things you were supposed to do for that group.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it also gets tricky too, because of the way that we're set up. So I'm normally West Coast based. We have a team the majority of our team is actually East Coast based. And then we have teams in, honestly, anybody in Europe gets the best of both worlds. They're always they're always considered, but we always get the short straw a little bit. But it also came down to, we had to run meetings twice sometimes, once for APAC, because there's very little overlap between APAC, EMEA, and Americas at the same time. And then once in the mornings, East Coast time for Europe. Yeah. So it kind of also created an additional workload too, to a certain extent. Yeah. Which we're managing. We've shortened meetings. We've made meetings much more topical. I don't want you to necessarily tell me all the things that you already wrote in the pre-notes. Oh, we have homework for meetings, pre-work for meetings. Rather, come prepared for 2 to 3 points, and then 2 to 3 asks. We don't necessarily talk about the points that you want to just update people on. They have eyes, they can read. Ask the questions, because the questions are actually what we're there to answer. So that kind of model of meeting efficiency, I think has helped the marketing team a bit, because otherwise it's just you're spending 30 hours a week in meetings.
Right. And
So,
the concept of like, when is it a headline and when is it a topic that needs discussion? And that's helping us, but it's a real challenge, especially if you're doing it twice for like time zones that will never align. It just is. Yeah.
My gosh.
Well, that's also a super useful insight across there is just no area of the world that isn't struggling with this. And I'm fascinated by this like ongoing future of work dialogue. So thank you. I think that was some really good insights. And I'll just wrap us up by asking you one last question, which is, what do most people not know about you? Got any quirks or hobbies? And you can't just use coffee, because you can't just use coffee.
I can't use coffee. What do people not know about me? I may, along with the caffeine thing, I may also be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. I don't know. Like I like extreme sports. Not actually extreme sports. I just like doing sports extremely.
I like that.
There's a difference.
Sports extremely. Okay, give me one example.
I did alpine skiing when I was in college. I still ski now. I started snowboarding because skiing got boring. I like to go for speed. It is of great concern. I started electric unicycling during the pandemic. So if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's electric unicycling.
Unicycling. It's literally put a link in the show notes.
It's a wheel. It goes fast sometimes, but it's an electric unicycle. And so, you just cruise along. I spent most of my pandemic in Seattle. So you just cruise along the water, you go get brunch, meet up with friends, and then you
up on your
unicycle home. So there are things I definitely put myself in concerning situations, given the fact that I opened I'm in Arlington right now. I opened our office door, not quite enough this morning, but I shoved my body through it, because I was just like, I got one handful of coffee. My other hand has my purse. Like, I just got to open this door and run in. Anyway,
this is extreme self-care, really, is what this is.
For a person who is largely uncoordinated, I take a lot of risks. So that's the only thing I got.
Unicycle and uncoordinated don't sound like they go together. But I recall you gently twisting the arms of your team to go soul cycle at 5 a.m. in the morning at an event, when we looked at you like, we will be setting things up, but... Count me out. It's really smart.
But here's the thing, like the team here in Arlington, they all run together. They love running, but I do think that like you need an outlet. You don't have an outlet. If I have somebody here from Long Island that goes kickboxing almost every day. And I just like, great, fantastic. You should absolutely go. Maybe go twice a day if you need to, but everybody needs an outlet. Everybody needs something to, de-stress.
Sure do. I envy that. And you're inspiring me. So thank you, Julie. And thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Paige.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Kennedy Events Podcast. Come back next time and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.